Hey guys, welcome back. I'm John Vogel and I'm here with Ian Nash from Nash Jingles and Music Studio 60. Hopefully you got to see our first and our pilot program where we talked about a Brian May bass guitar, the BMG bass that Ian had recently purchased. We had such a great feedback and so much interest in that we've been talked into coming back and doing a whole series of guitar reviews, normal guitars, bass guitars. So today we're starting with episode 2. Now, before we get into that and before I start chatting to Ian, let's get through all the official stuff. Click on the subscribe button down below. If you're a YouTube Googler, you're probably watching us on Music Studio's YouTube page. Subscribe to that. Head across to Facebook, Nash Jingles, hit the like button, Music Studio, hit the like button there. There are other links to myself and my real job. If you're interested, follow your nose. Let's not waste any more time. That's the official stuff out the way. Ian Nash.
John,
welcome back.
I'm
good.
Thank
And you?
Brilliant.
That's good. Now, last time we spoke, we did a review on the BMG bass, Brian May's bass. But before that, we looked at you. You're, just a quick recap, you're a professional muso, you're a record producer, you're a songwriter, you play mostly bass, but you're a guitarist. Now, in part of going through what you did and who you are, you told us a little story about how you initially were a Fender kind of guy, Fender guitars, because as I said in that issue, that episode, a lot of guitarists tend to fall in one camp or the other, mostly. And you were a Fender guy, you had Fenders, and then one day you were convinced to pick up a Gibson acoustic, you played it, and that was a life-changing day.
Absolutely. So back in about 2012, 13, I was looking for a jumbo guitar.
Yeah.
And I went off down to Alan's Music down on the Gold Coast. And I met the store manager at the time, Guy Salmon, and I tried out a few lower-end model jumbos, an Epiphone one. Sounded really good, and I was leaning towards that. Then Guy came along and said, hey, if you reckon that's good, you want to try the SJ200 Gibson, which I did, and like, wow, that was as you say, that was a defining moment.
Epiphany moment.
Yeah.
So by that stage though, were you already a Gibson bass man? Had you?
No. I at that point in time, I hadn't ever owned a Gibson.
Right.
I had Fenders and Ibanez and Washburns and all sorts of guitars.
Yeah.
But this was my first time I played a Gibson guitar. And wow, I was blown away. And I couldn't believe that after playing guitar for nearly 40 years, I'd never played a Gibson. And this was amazing. Mind you, the SJ200 coming in the mid 5,000s, it was out of my price range.
Yeah.
So I just took it all in and started looking for a second one.
I think it's fair to say in the guitar world, in the bass world, not all guitars are equal.
No.
The old saying that you get what you pay for is very true.
Absolutely.
Now, for a budget end or an entry level, there's some sensational guitars out there. But with the J200, obviously, you're going straight to the top of the tree.
That's right. So the J200 was clearly in my price range. So I started looking on the second-hand market. There wasn't a lot in Australia that for those jumbos. What I did find was a J185, and that fitted within my budget. And Matt's Vintage Guitars in Sydney had one online. I had a look at it. I knew that it sounded similar to the J200, so that's what I went after.
So before we take a look at the actual 185 that you've bought and owned ever since, quickly, what are the differences between a 200 to a 185?
Right, the J185 in this case does not have a pickup. It's just a purely acoustic guitar.
Right.
The J185 has some subtle differences. Firstly, it's not the same body size as the J200. This particular J185 has Sitka spruce timber with flame flame maple sides and back, which gives it a really rich tone. It covers both the low end, the middle tones, and the high tones. It's really quite nice.
And when you mention size, is it physically slightly smaller
Yes, it is.
than a 200?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And that would give you a slight change in tone and sound too, I imagine.
Yes, it does.
Minimal?
Minimal.
Okay.
I mean, you'd have to really have acute hearing to notice any difference.
Yep.
You would have more difference in the tone if it was made of a different material as opposed to citrus spruce and flame maple. Yeah.
So let's have a look then at the 185. Run us through it.
Okay, so this is the J185. These were very popular when they first came out in the 1950s. This is a 2003 model when they decided to reissue them. As with all great Gibson guitars, the popular ones get reissued from time to time for a limited run. Now this series of J185 from about 2001 through to about 2012, 2013, then they stopped. Once again, there was a gap in the market, and Gibson are currently making them again now, equal to those ones from the early 2000s, but at a higher price, of course, with labor tax and so forth like that. But it's really is a beautiful guitar. It's got the Gleason machine heads, bone nut. Like I said, the citrus spruce top, the flamed maple sides and rear. I mean, look at that rear.
Wow.
Back. I mean, that is just beautiful.
We were talking off camera a little while ago about sometimes you go into a guitar shop and certain guitars stand out. And to some people like us, we look at a guitar and it's not just a musical instrument, but it's a work of art.
Yeah.
I'm a bit like that with cars too, but that is a great looking guitar. Like I've walked, you can look at guitars and go, yeah, that's a nice guitar. But some guitars you look at and go, man, that is a quality, good looking guitar. And this certainly is one of those.
Absolutely.
So obviously this is a guitar that's made a huge difference on you in your musical journey. You bought it and you've kept it. Did you ever get the 200?
No, I didn't, but I've got one coming.
You got one coming?
Yes.
Okay, finally.
And that's on its way, and that will be in a future episode.
Yeah.
But with the J185, I mean, this is, according to the guitar professionals and collectors out there, this is one of Gibson's finest guitars, without a doubt. It's very, very popular. You don't see too many on the second-hand market. They get picked up very, very quickly. But it is really a fine guitar.
So, what do you do mostly with it? Is this just a guitar you play for enjoyment, or I'm guessing you've recorded with it? Is it a go-to guitar?
Yeah, this is my go-to guitar. When I'm, in most cases, when I'm going into the studio to record a jingle or a new album, or I've got some ideas for a project, I usually pick up this because of the full body sound.
Yep.
And use it in the studio. I've also used it live when I played with Hayley about this time last year. We used this in her live performance, and if you want to have a look at that on YouTube, you can see the differences between this and some of the other Gibsons and Taylors that I played at the time. The difference in sound is just amazing, and that leads me into people say, what's the difference between a studio and a standard? And it's very, very important when you're looking at an acoustic guitar, the sound you want. Now, you've got to balance the sound quality of what you want against what you can afford. Believe me, if you can afford the additional few $100s for a standard, go for the standard. Same thing. Not everyone likes the tone of walnut. If you can go for the maple or the rosewood blend sound, the difference is quite amazing. In fact, that extra $200, $500, $700 difference is so noticeable that I would recommend going the extra and going for the standard model or the rosewood model, sort of that, because the difference in sound is just phenomenal.
And I think that's an important point that you've raised, because It's like a lot of things. If you want to try something or you want to get into something, but you only buy a cheap version or a starter version, and you don't quite get the sound or you don't like it, you tend to just, it falls by the wayside. Whereas if you can stretch to that extra, get something that gives you that wow sound, it's an encouragement. It just encourages you to go further rather than...
You do. And I find that where the real difference is when you're in the studio and you're playing with just acoustics and you're using mic'd acoustics, the standard will hands down beat the studio sound every time. It's just a richness of tone, and when you're after that nice clear sound, that's the difference.
Yeah.
And 40 years of playing guitar has taught me that.
Yeah.
And that's something you don't pick up straight away. And we teach a lot of young musicians, guitarists and piano players, and we do master classes, which we'll talk about in a future episode. And there's sorts of things that we pass on to our students in the master class. Why it's important when you're looking for that pure sound, the difference. All those subtle differences can be the make and break when you're in the studio.
Yeah. And it's like a lot of things too. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because like a lot of things, there is a science to it, whether it's a sport, and to someone coming into it, you may just think, well, a guitar's a guitar. Well, no, not really.
Yeah.
There are so many different things, and it all comes down to materials that are used, what you like, the sound you want, the style of music you're going to play. And that's something that 40 years of experience teaches you.
And also, because I'm a guitar collector, there are different things that you're looking for when you're collecting as part of your collection. I mean, some people just collect all the same, like Les Pauls. They just collect all Les Pauls.
Yeah.
But there's a reason for that. No two Les Pauls are the same. You have customs, you have standards, you have traditionals, you have LPJs, you have tributes, and so forth. You have different colours.
Yeah. Different woods.
Different woods, absolutely. Yeah. So, and I'm pretty sure, I think we're going to be interviewing a Les Paul guitarist.
Aficionado.
Shortly.
In an upcoming episode.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that he will tell you the subtle differences between the different Les Pauls. So there you go. So this is my J185. This is my go-to guitar. My first ever Gibson. It was a life changer.
Terrific. That's a great story.
No
Ian, thank you very much.
No worries.
We will be doing future episodes. We'll probably cycle through your guitar collection, which is just an awesome collection. I've got a few basses we may look at from time to time in my collection. We're going to be talking to a friend of ours in upcoming episodes called Hayden Stanek. He's the Les Paul aficionado that we were talking about. He's got a guitar collection to be envious of. We'll be talking to Hayley. You mentioned Hayley earlier. She's a singer-songwriter, pianist, guitar player that you manage, publicise for, produce. The interesting thing with Hayley is that Hayley is blind. And one of the things we're going to talk about is Braille music. Anyway, I won't get into it any further. We'll save that for another episode. Thanks for joining us. Like I said earlier, don't forget to hit subscribe. Give us some feedback in the comments. Let us know what you like. If there's things you want to know, things you want to hear about, or would like us to talk about, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks for that. Take care.